Welcome to another episode of Learning for Truth and Love. We're going to do something a little unusual today in that we will listen to a live radio of an interview I had that I really appreciate Carolivia Herron for allowing me to play this back because you can't access it anymore from her radio show. So sit tight. This is audio recording and listen to Carolivia Herron's Dr. Carolivia Herron's radio show of which is called Epic City, of which I was a guest talking about my fiction books.
Hello, this is WOWDLP Tacoma Park. This is Epic City, and if you're wondering if you heard Marian Anderson singing 12 Gates to the City twice, yes, you did, because I'm getting my act together here the day after our holiday, and I will be bringing to you Professor Dr. Catherine Quinlan and her 3 chapter books from the series Keystone Passage. And I'll be talking with her. She's actually here in the studio, which is rare. Since COVID, I don't have too many people. I'm not used to looking at a real person. I also teach on Zoom, so I don't have real people in front of me that often. So it's nice to have you here in this studio. And I have you on. Your mic is now open. Just say hello.
Hi.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, make sure we can hear you well. And before we talk more with Catherine, who's a colleague of mine from Howard University School of Education, I'll talk more about that in a moment. She is author, obviously, of these books that I'm going to read you their titles right now. The Keystone Passage series. And the first one is, am I correct, is To Africa and Back.
Yes.
And the second one is Day and Night on the Space Station. And the third is Traveling Through the Trees. And she teaches science education. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Howard University School of Education, where my mother, Georgia Johnson Herron, taught science education many long years ago. So it's wonderful to have that connection here.
Yeah,
I feel
thank
like
you.
we're passing it on
Absolutely.
as we go on here. So I want to give a thanks to the Faculty Leadership Institute. Professor Quinlan and I are both a part of that, and
Yes.
to Associate Provost Dark, who basically is brought us together.
Yes.
And
She is.
and we were sitting near each other in the room. And what do you mean you wrote children's books? Okay, give me your card. Let me connect. And that's exactly what we have done. So this day in history, I don't have any of the many specific things. This is Boxing Day in England and that sort of thing. But it's also Saturnalia back in ancient Rome, and you're just supposed to party from now to till the new year begins. That's all that's about. The extra days of the year. They had these months that were 30 days each, and then the last few days we just party till you get to 365, and then you start over again. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about this time. As for say their names, I'm repeating what I've been saying for several weeks now. Hostages, civilians, children. I do not have all their names, all of our precious ones. The women who were raped, the children who were slaughtered, all the sons of mothers, all the daughters of fathers. Peace. We all long for peace. Let there be peace. Let there be justice and peace. And the epic moment, I have to tell you that I was surprised and particularly delighted in reading To Africa and Back by Professor Quinlan, because I felt that for the first time I had read a children's book that is comparable to the Eurocentric books I read as a child, without the racism. And I've often felt sad that this is something that maybe I could ask you as an education person. You know, we talk about children needing to see people like themselves in the books they read.
Absolutely.
But the rest of us, us old folks, we didn't have that, of course.
Yeah.
And if we if we had needed that, we wouldn't have done what we did.
Absolutely.
And we learned how to put almost like I could almost physically feel a place in my brain where I'd put that stuff that was negative over there in the corner so that I could appreciate the other part. but I've often felt sad. I'm thinking particularly of the children's book author E. Nesbitt Bland, and Five Children and It and the Samoyed story. There's some wonderful stories. The Phoenix and the Carpet, and even stories about Egypt that she had, and that had negative images of copper colored people, dark people, and so forth. And yet I was able to enjoy them, and I felt like the children today wouldn't be able to enjoy them because you have to put. How do you train somebody to put that in a corner and not to notice that your own image is being treated in a negative way?
Absolutely.
And so anyway, you've done something that I didn't think existed. Quite frankly, I didn't, because I've read fantasies that based on African imagery, but quite frankly, they've never delighted me as the ones that I've read that were Eurocentric. And your work actually was delightful, and I could get into the personalities of the kids. And what Chandra is a mess. You got to tell, where did you come up with Chandra? What did you do? Is that somebody you know, or did you just decide to make up a person that's good? I want to go home. Forget this mess. I don't want to travel around the world. Can you tell me about your characters? Uh-huh.
Your characters, especially for me, being new to children's writing, which is different from academia, I had to tap into people I knew.
Yes.
And so, there was a little bit of Chandra in some different people, a little bit of Cliff in different people.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I took different people I knew and
put them together.
Yeah.
Sean, it's like every time I know what she's going to say. What I don't care what what it looks like. I'm from America. Give me some stars and stripes. I don't know. I didn't know that could be done in such a delightful way, and you really truly made it delightful. And I hope I don't want to give away the story. You must read these. I happen to love children's writings, and even though I'm a novelist for adults, at least I think of that primarily. Even when I'm in the midst of writing for adults, I've always thought that I want to end my career writing for children. I feel like that's where I want to go. Writing fantasy stories for children. That to me, that's the highest level. Even today, I go back and forth between Dostoevsky and Alice in Wonderland. I sort of go between those extremes of fiction and children's books. I love I guess who else? So many people. Books I remember. Half Magic. Who wrote those books? I'm trying to think. There's a whole series of books where each kid has a totally different personality and ruins the story, but pulls the story a different way.
Yeah.
Like there'll be a magic coin or a magic something, and each child pulls it in a different kind of direction. And I used to try to get my cousins. Cousins to do stuff like your cousins do, and they wouldn't act right. I hope they're not listening now. They're probably listening somewhere. Anyway, and we have the additional joy and pleasure of actually. What was so hard? I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a lot.
Oh, it's okay.
Because it's moving me so much.
Yeah.
I always thought the reason why there are no African American children's books that do what I was looking for is that we're already steeped in the Eurocentric world, but we're not steeped in the Afrocentric world. And so you have to do too much teaching. And because of that extra teaching, it would take away from the story. But you get around that by giving each child a different angle on the Afrocentric. And so you're able to teach us as a part of the plot rather than taking us away to an academic explanation. Can you talk about that a bit?
The whole goal was to help our students learn, or our kids to learn more about their heritage, as they're going on these explorations. Because as you can see, that's one of the things I've noticed as I was reading to my son, that we have these amazing magical books, but which some of them take us on to discover Western worlds, but where is the discovery of ourselves? And then there's the other components to think about, that our children are growing up here, so they're not necessarily going to relate to either as well, right? Whether it's Afrocentric or Western or Eurocentric. And so how do we bring it home in such a way that it's grounded in where the students live, the kids live, and still allow them to appreciate who they are, to discover themselves, right? To learn to love themselves, really, which was what I was aiming for.
Yeah, well, one thing that's wonderful about what you've done is that you may be aiming for that, but what you've achieved is high art. And The
Wow.
learning takes place without you noticing it. Maybe I don't know if that's a value to you, but
Yes.
I like the idea that you don't downgrade the storytelling part in
Hmm.
order to add the information that we need.
Oh, yeah.
And I just got a wonderful note telling me that Edward Edgar wrote Half Magic, and that series of books that another series of books reminds me a little bit of some of the things you do.
Mm-hmm.
I was not able to read the other two as carefully. Indeed, one of them I didn't have at all,
That's all right.
and the second one I've only been able to skim.
Mm-hmm.
But I am reminded of his work in the one. I'm sorry, where A Day and Night in the Space Station.
Yeah.
That's the one, and he actually has chapters in which the children help runaway slaves, white children help runaway slaves,
Wow.
and things like that. For his own time, he was certainly morally way ahead
Yeah.
of what others were doing. And I think his final children's book uh, had children being told that there's something wrong with some people want to move in and nobody wants them to move in. The children can't figure it out, and it turns out that they're black children, a black family moving into the neighborhood. That's I think that's in the 1950s. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
the last books. Anyways, it's just interesting that he puts magic into those kinds of texts here. And I have to take you now to the Geechees and the go. I'm a Geechee, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't I didn't say that. Did we mention that at all?
I didn't think we had talked about it at a time, but I think I was listening to something else you said
Mm-hmm.
and discovered. Yeah, awesome.
So tell me, why did you choose the Geechee connection in your text, or is there?
Sure.
I
Well, the Giza connection is in a third. Well, they're kind of a little bit in each book.
Okay.
Like the first one, we kind of start off in that area.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, not as much a second, but then the third, it captures some of not necessarily Geechee, but some of the work that's resulted from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I focused on the Geechee especially because I saw them as the bridge between Africa and the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and in my research, it allowed me to mesh the two. But a lot of the background for my work, for example, the first one is based on my curricular research on African rock art image analysis. The second one's based on a course I taught on life in space.
You're jumping over too many things. You're going to have to go back and you're going to tell me about your research and or about this course, one or the other. I need to know. I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, not a problem. So, well, the first one was, as part of my research focuses on how do we bring Black heritage to science? In a way that students can learn, the importance of not just the importance of science, but where they can engage in the processes, the practices of science, and at the same time get to know themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, part of the beginning of that work, I looked at African rock art images and came up with African rock art image analysis, and I wrote an article about that. Where students can explore, assets from Black heritage and just really ask questions about it, make inferences about it, just carry out various cognitive processes,
Mm-hmm.
And they could do it from the approach they want. They can look at the science, right? The chemistry of the rock art, how did the paint made, to the cultural part, right? So what do these images mean, or the artistic, just whatever questions they want.
Yes, you have kids with their well. Why don't we just wash the thing off? It's muddy, it's filthy, and then the others, no, it may mean something. You gotta watch it and look at everything around it. And it reminds me of arguments that used to take place in the Bureau of Land Management when I worked there, with the arguments between the hydrologists and the archaeologists, wanting to protect and wanting to clean and look and all the
Absolutely.
different kinds of scholars there among the children. One thing that irked me, I should say, about not about your work, but about the characters. That the kids were not allowed to have their cell phones on when they went to grandma's house, who had a wonderful banquet.
Uh-huh.
And I was just thinking some of the things that are rough on children when they have to live in a different environment. I remember I would visit my cousins who lived in Massachusetts, and they would never turn lights on during the day. Well, I have bad eyes, and I would
Okay.
read all day long, and I needed the light on, and they would get upset that I was wasting electricity. And I remember thinking, I went home and told my daddy, would you send me some money to get on the Greyhound? I'm coming home. I need the light on, and I want to read. I don't care what they say. And
Absolutely.
and I don't know. I transferred a little bit
Oh, wow.
to
Okay.
this. Like, wait a minute, and it's not so much that you would need the cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's rough when you're in a different environment as a child,
Right.
and there's some new rule
Mm-hmm.
that and your parents are there. You don't have your usual ways of maneuvering around things,
Wow.
and I thought about that. But
Well,
well, go on. I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say it's amazing how you're interpreting it. It's just I'm fascinated just to see that. For me, grandma's house is very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up with my grandma,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's interesting for you. It's not as it's a less familiar place, or it reminds you of a less familiar place rather.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tapping into some of my own. It's tapping into a little bit of me,
Mm-hmm.
as far as raising my son and having kids around. My tendency is, okay, let's turn that off so you all can play and have fun and do other things and
Mm-hmm.
go out in the yard and play. So that's me bringing some of my own personality into this.
Yes. Yes, well, I understand, and indeed that reminds me of the group I'm supposed to be telling you about today. Is for sponsor recognition support for Tacoma Radio comes from you, our listeners, and from Fair Days Play,
Ooh.
an independent toy store in downtown Tacoma Park, Maryland, specializing in children's books, games, crafts, toys, learning tools. Fair Days Play is open for in-person shopping at 7050 Carroll Avenue. And just thinking about playing and there's a strong push in Tacoma,
Mhm.
not just for the toy store, but get outside and play. Don't sitting there looking at a screen all day long. So I can understand your impulse,
Absolutely.
and doing that. You did this TED Talk. That's been spread around about a bit, I assume.
The TEDx, yeah.
Yes, and is it? I would like to play that for folks if that's all right with you,
Oh, sure.
because it's an interesting take on you're getting ready, how you decided to write, and I bear with me as I fumble around and trying to be my own engineer here. The clarity we need for belonging
Yep.
is the name of it, and it's about 8 minutes, so
Mhm.
I'm going to play that. And let me let you know, those of you listening, this is Epic City on WOWDLP Tacoma Park 94.3 FM. I'm Carolivia Herron, I call you EJ, that is your epic jockey, instead of your DJ. And I'm speaking with Professor Catherine Quinlan of the Howard University School of Education, who's written 3 chapter books for young adults. Keystone Passage, To Africa and Back is the one I know the best, and the other 2 are Day and Night on the Space Station and Traveling Through the Trees. Now, listen to her. This is her 8-minute TED Talk, except my hands clicked on the wrong button. Come back. Where are you? All right. Can you believe it? I accidentally closed it up. Oh, how can you do this to me? And my clothes are all catching up in it. This is not the way it's supposed to happen. Folks, bear with me. I'm not really this bad.
Sure.
Come
That's
on.
okay.
All right. Catherine, there you are then.
It's the introduction.
Oh, it's not the intro to it. I thought I'd done something wrong.
I married a white man, and no amount of dance lessons we paid for could prepare him to sweep me off that dance floor. So in my embarrassment, I suggested we dance really close so we could appear to be in step together. It was a beautiful wedding. Black, white, different folks on the dance floor, until we got to the cliffs and the floor cleared, except for my family and my 70-year-old white mother-in-law, who had got close to the ground and did moves that I hadn't. Years later, we have a beautiful baby boy. He's black and white. We read him stories since he was a baby, and I listened to my husband make up stories. But as a mother, I began to see a pattern. None of those stories would encourage him to embrace his Black heritage. It certainly explained to me why, growing up, I learned to value white narratives more. My heart sank when I placed a book with a Black boy in front of my baby and he pushed it away. Why did my baby, who couldn't yet crawl, push this book away? I'll never forget that moment. Was he rejecting Blackness? Was he rejecting me? I wanted to make sure he appreciated everything about him and made him beautiful. So I approached this like the science education researcher that I am. I knew that my baby loved books he was accustomed to. So I was relieved to learn that he was not rejecting Blackness. He was rejecting newness. You see, books were especially important to us because we waited until our son was 5 years old to introduce him to television. So it was interesting to see how books were shaping his ideas as he repeated sayings, cliches, and later on ideologies and ways of being that I could not embrace because they would not encourage him to value his Black heritage. I didn't want our son to be boxed in by societal norms I didn't respect. So my personal life and my research life became enmeshed as I focused my National Science Foundation project on exploring the lived experiences and narratives of Blacks in the science curriculum. I wanted to understand how our children, how can I even learn to value ourselves? How could I be equally valued as a Black person with an Ivy League education as my white husband is without an Ivy League education? As I continued to collect qualitative and quantitative data, I began to see a pattern. It took a while to see what they all had in common and what meshed my personal and research life. But first, let me illustrate with a few examples. In 2016, I had the pleasure of speaking with Ed Dwight. He's the first African American to train to be an astronaut in the United States in the 1960s. I learned that he was called a Kennedy boy. That way others associate his success with being chosen rather than his accomplishments, even though he passed all the challenging tests. Others were told to isolate him, not mix with him or invite him to their home, so that in order to break him. His career was defined by shaming. You see, instead of belonging, we're shamed and feel shame, often through isolation, aggressions, lack of interest, manipulations. It still happens today, especially when people attribute our success to luck from initiative programs rather than to our accomplishments. You see, when Blacks are shamed, we distance ourselves from our accomplishments. It's important to note that those who shame us also distance themselves from our accomplishments, often to live up to expectations or a cultural script. I'm embarrassed to say that we were able to witness the rippling effects of shame in our home one day. I said something to my husband, who said something to our son, and he stormed off. It happened so quickly, but I knew it was happening. And so I had to take responsibility that I said something. You see, since we've been working on our shame experiences, we've been much happier. I'm happy to say that everyone says about our son that he's happy, open, and kind. You see, our children shame others when they experience and feel shame, and when we shame them, and when they model our shaming behaviors, when we shame others. And this brings me to my main point today. Until we get clarity of our shaming experiences that is attached to our identity, we can never have belonging and positive identity for all without shaming others, especially belonging for Blacks, and especially without shaming Blacks. Until you and I get clarity of our shaming, we will return to the same place, the same emotional place, where we always wonder how we got here, a place we never left. Why do we seem to overreact to situations you might perceive as small? It's because you're piling onto the shame we've already been experiencing at the hands of your friends, relatives, in the workplace, at home, in the streets, on a job. Until you get clarity of your shaming, we will continue to be bonded by our shame. I want to leave you with this call to action. Before we leave today, take out your book or device. Write one thing you're ashamed of or that brought you shame recently. If you're unsure, what did you react to in anger? And what was shaming about that? How did someone react to you in anger recently? And what did you say that was shaming? Let's break the cycle of shame so that we can all belong. Thank you.
Well, power indeed. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you sent it to me. I first thought you'd sent me a song, and then I said, "Well, let me see. This is not a song. Let me hear it." And I was very pleased to hear your words like that.
Thank you.
And you don't go on from there to tell why you write the books, but you can tell what what the core of your writing comes from, and going toward this, and I would like to. I'm wondering what I would write in that. If I had to write out something, what am I ashamed of? I'll have to think about that and decide between several things probably. What it is that makes us feel shame.
Mm-hmm.
I am reminded when I share my book Nappy Hair with a mixed child audience,
Mm-hmm.
and it may not look like it when I'm telling the story, but say there are 4 or 5 black kids, and the rest of them are white kids in the audience, and even though I may look like I'm talking to everyone, my eye is on the black children, on the African American children the whole time, and as soon as I see any sign of shame, I actually stop the narrative and start talking a little bit about other things. And by the way, nobody did this. Nobody, no, but nobody's guilty. Nobody enslaved anybody. Nobody in this room, and start talking and give it a different context until I see that look of shame dissipate, and then I go back to the story. But I won't keep going through with it if I see the heads drop down.
Right. Makes sense.
So I can appreciate. I've never thought about shame as the word to use.
Yeah, it's interesting too with shame because, um, it's like we feel the shame. We're ashamed of being ashamed, and so how do you correct that? By realizing it's not, redirecting, our shame towards ourselves just really exacerbates things for ourselves, and that's something that, I wanted to take a very holistic approach at how do we get to the bottom of some of the underlying things that happen, some of the things that we may not talk about, but perpetuates in even the mildest of situations when it seems like it's not there.
When something's not even happening and it's still happening.
Right, and it's still happening there.
Yes, I'm taking a glance now through the To Africa and Black, one of the 3 books Professor Quinlan, Catherine Quinlan, who's with me right now, wrote. And I was hoping you could read. I was wondering what a good part to read aloud, and I'm not sure. I was so busy reading it myself, I didn't stop to say, "Oh, this is a good part right here."
Yeah.
But I enjoy the different places they go. Shall I give a little bit of background?
Sure.
One of the things I enjoyed about Africa and Black is that there's use of an antiquated object that assists the children in essentially moving beyond the places they are into a fantastic world that allows them to travel to Africa and back. And they have to, in a way, they almost have to do a puzzle or quiz in order to figure out how to get back home using this writing.
Yeah.
And you did a paper on that, on that kind of writing? Is that what you told me?
No, well, the paper I did was more in science education. This is kind of, um, I should say, this is taking some of my creative type of work. My main work is usually academic.
Yes, of course.
So tapping into the creative side is just completely different. I have to literally take myself someplace else.
And did you really have a grandmother on the Georgia Sea Islands or in St. Helena?
Not in St. Helena, but I do have a grandmother who's always been very dear to me. I grew up with her. And it was interesting. I was talking to other people after I wrote this book who said, it's like, my gosh, it's just the similarities, right? A lot of us talk about our grandmothers. Your grandmothers tend to take care of us you know, while our moms or our parents are working and things like that. So not there, no.
I was curious. So did you do some research for the book itself on the area?
For the area, it's interesting. I had to. I should say this. I had to do the most research for the third.
Oh,
because I made the third a little bit more. I tried to do something different and intricate each time. But for the first one, I capitalized on the research I did prior. About African rock art in different places. And so it does, and my research on the Khoisan peoples, South Africa, indigenous Africans. And so that part is where I, incorporate some of those. And I was very, what's the word, specific and very particular about even how I name the characters.
Yes, I was asking about the naming, and the Khoisan people really intrigued me. I talk about them in the course I teach in classics.
Yeah.
Called Blacks in Antiquity and the indigenous people of Southern Africa and so forth, and that I need to do more research. How old are their writings? I mean, they seem to have been there from the beginning of time.
Absolutely.
From what I can tell, and I haven't been able to I haven't yet pinned down when the writing
Yeah.
became well, the carbon dating, all that sort of, you talk about that too, by the way.
I do mention it because, for my prior research paper, I was looking into the carbon dating and what they've discovered and, how many years and the particulars of the pros and cons of even dating something, right? The type of questions you ask. Am I dating the rock or am I dating the painting?
Yes,
And,
I've never heard that. I've never heard that question before. Oh my goodness, can you imagine going through all that and all you've done is dated the paint, which was like put on there a million years later or something? And
yeah,
how do you know? How can you tell?
well, this is a question that archaeologists have been asking. So what I try to capture in there is highlighting African rock art as African assets, right? Because scientists have been capitalizing on it for years, discovering, making a career out of it, and so many different fields, as a matter of fact, right? Sociology, asking, well, who should do the interpretation, stuff like that. So, but in this book, I really wanted to hone in on the children's story part of it while bringing that in,
Yes. And does watermelon really come from Africa?
What's that?
Does watermelon really come from Africa? I never heard that before.
Absolutely. Watermelon is one of the, over 2,000 plants indigenous. Well, I shouldn't say indigenous. One of the 2,000 plants that actually grows in Africa, which is what my other bigger work is about. Because we don't often associate, things like watermelon, cantaloupes, and all these different things, okra, as being an asset that we brought here, right? And so I that's part of my other type of research, understanding how we've contributed to the United States, to Western culture, as part of bringing Black heritage to science.
Yes, and then there's the okra. I love there are several okra stories
Yeah.
that are in that.
Loved okra.
Some people hate it, some people love it.
Yeah.
Grandma sure knows how to cook it.
Yeah.
And my family, not many people liked it. I happen to like okra, but not many people did. I think they took a side trip to Massachusetts, and that messed them up. On the way to okra, it didn't quite work. And okra has a special meaning in this neighborhood. I don't know how close you are to Tacoma, D.C., but we have a character in our community called Okra Tom,
Oh.
and whenever whenever we get on an online argument about we don't want all these bicycle things on our streets, or why the speed bump so high, and everybody's yelling and cussing each other out on our listserv. Back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, whenever that happens, Okra Tom starts offering okra. And that's a sign of, okay, it's time for peace. Calm down.
Yeah.
Get some okra and enjoy yourself. And new people in the neighborhood don't know this yet. And so that happened one time, just before COVID, I think. What are you talking about, okra? And I'm mad as hell. It's like, I don't want to talk about anybody's okra. And we had to explain that this was a code sign about for peace. Calm down. So we have an okra Tom who lives not too far
Oh, wow.
in Tacoma, D.C., and he always sort of involves himself with our things. Well, I wanted to I usually only play one thing outside of listening to my guests as I'm listening to you, but I have your song here that you recommended, so I thought we could play that, and you
Yeah.
could tell us your choice.
Sure.
And this is John. I'm sorry, I'm getting the
John Mayer.
Mayor and waiting on the world to change.
Yeah.
See if I can. Pretty self-explanatory. Anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. Part of this work is me deciding not to wait on the world. Wait on the world of books. I decided I self-published this. My creative works, which is very different from my academic.
Yes.
I have my first academic book that I'm working on as well. It's by a publisher. But in this case, I wanted to be able to give our children the best of me, and I didn't want anyone else to dictate what was supposed to be important to them, important for them to know, important for them to read. And so I decided that this was more important to me. This is my heart, and so
Yeah. At some of the times when I'm sorry, who's your really your informed character, and I'm forgetting his name.
Cliff.
Hey, Daddy's been telling you to pay attention, and you haven't been paying attention, and now you're mad.
Oh, Duante, yeah.
Yeah, it's about time for you to listen. Yeah. But I actually felt that it was my own father. Many books that he asked me to read, and I was so deep into the classics, I wouldn't read any of them. And, oh yeah, okay, yeah, Daddy, later kind of thing. And now those are the books I'm teaching in the Blacks and Antiquity course. But I didn't read them. I was too deep into the others then. So even though they're children, I felt that it's a lesson for adults as well about.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. I guess that goes back to your concept of shame. That's something that is not, I don't know, celebrated everywhere. It's really more important than something that's celebrated. It's hard to believe it. I go over and over things that have happened that I've missed because we didn't know. That going to a thought comes to me right now from high school. One of my fellow students, Rosemary's father, flew an airplane for the Tuskegee Airmen. It never crossed anybody's mind that that was anything at all significant. And nobody invited him to school to talk to anyone. And we were reading about all these other wonderful, and now that he's gone, it's like, why didn't somebody bring him to the school?
Yeah.
Why didn't somebody invite him to talk to us about what it was like to fly an airplane in World War II, protecting other United States planes, and things like that.
Absolutely.
And you have to make a mind change in order to be able to appreciate it. I was wondering if you could just give. I don't want you to give away the plots of all three books,
Sure.
but if you could give us at least for the second and third a little bit of where they're situated and where they take the students, the young people,
Sure.
because I want.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah, could you?
my second book, Day and Night in the Space Station, um, really capitalize on science of space station microgravity. I used to teach a course on that. So I based it on that and about historical figures, especially those related to space.
Mm-hmm.
So they go on another discovery again, and things happen there as well. And when the third book is it's very interesting. The third book was I don't want to say it was my hardest book to write, but it was the one that I needed to do a little bit more research. I wanted to tap into some of the work I was discovering on the thousands of plants, right, that grew in Africa, and that were native, or that was grew in those conditions. And also tap into some of the stories behind it as well. And so there was a magic in that, and things happening and relationships happening as well. But, I even, I draw in some of the historical narratives from even places, just so people can understand the thinking behind places and why things came to be, things that we wouldn't have thought about, and it could be as simple as, okay, might we even have home in the hills, right? So that people on horses wouldn't get to us, things like that.
I see.
And so, but again, I focused on, reaching children and tapping into a different part of storytelling with children, as they can learn and discover these.
And the children here all want to get back home so the grandma can start telling her stories again too. At least in the first one.
Yes.
And how I guess I'm curious. I don't know the second and third. How do you have adult storytellers as well in those, or it's told by the actual plants and animals and whatever?
So there are a couple more adults in the third one. I tapped into some characters that and that's another thing I'm excited about, maybe later down in the future, because I literally, I keep track of my memoing and how I think about characters.
Yes, I would love to do a comparative analysis of 5 children and it and your book. That's the book
wow.
that the it is not an object as it is in your work. The third it's a trilogy. The third one it is an object. It's an amulet of some kind from Egypt that makes all kinds of weird things happen and all that sort of thing. But I, it's ruled by the interesting kinds of differences in personalities, how the concept of character,
Yeah.
and how you can take a character and take it further and further and further until
Absolutely.
it causes a problem, and then the others have to have a counsel and pull it back together again.
It's exciting.
And hopefully, we don't have sad endings. I don't know. I don't know. I was just thinking back over my childhood a couple of days ago, and I have a cousin, Ricky, who's a year older than me, and we went to see Peter Pan when I was about 7 years old with a bunch of cousins. And when they made Wendy walk the plank, I freaked out, screaming, and I thought they were going to make her jump. I couldn't, and he was the oldest cousin, so he had to take me out. And he had to walk me up and down in the lobby of the movie, calming me down.
Oh.
He said, "Don't you know they're not going to kill Wendy?" That kind of thing. And I was just thinking, and he was trying to explain to me that there's no way in the world Disney is going to let Wendy die in the middle of Peter Pan. But I was like, I can't. I don't care what happens. I was saying to myself, even 2 or 3 days ago, as I remembered it. You can say anything you want. You can be as mad as you want with me, but don't let go of my hand. I was so scared. I was so scared for her. And thinking about trying to make children's stories realistic, and yet you don't want them to end up grieving,
traumatized or anything.
Yeah, traumatized, grieving, and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and I because I hadn't figured out Disney yet by that time, and that Wendy did not have to walk the plank really, and jump into the water. Oh, so I I uh, I guess I have another interest. The the child. Oh, I wish I could remember the name. They meet two children,
Oh, I should remember right. I wrote those characters.
Petrus and
Yes.
Katriana, and I was not able. I can't pronounce the mother's name. Sartije.
Sartji.
Sartji. Uh, and can you tell me more about what is that history? Is that
Wow.
where are they? Do you remember? I know it's 3 books ago. So
I do.
okay.
Wow. I can't believe I'm going to say this on the air. There was actually a very specific reason for choosing Sarchi.
Okay.
Sarchi is the French name, I think, for Sarah Bartman. And so I had, I was really delving into history. And, it's funny. I thought of keeping that one to myself and deciding.
I messed up. And
That's
messed you
okay.
right up.
No, you didn't. I said one day. It's interesting that you were interested.
Well, I
Yeah.
I was intrigued by her in the book, and I've been intrigued by Sarah Bartman in my real life.
Wow.
As a part of it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember all the things that intrigued me. How she looked in real life. Who is she? And
Well, she was.
she was because of her big rear end or something.
Yeah.
She was exposed and basically.
Yeah, she was like made a spectacle of.
Yes.
And it's interesting because obviously this is not, children aren't going to get that out of it.
No.
But my perhaps adults reading it might read that much into it, but not children. And so
And then I mess you up right totally
No.
by going straight there. Well, I was intrigued because
Yeah.
the other characters seemed to have African names, and I noticed these names were more European, and I was of the children, not.
Oh, the children.
And
Okay.
So I was wondering about that, and that
Right.
made me wonder why their mother's name was so odd, so unusual.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, the children's name actually were so Petrus is actually one of the leaders of the Khoisan. And he died shortly after I wrote my article. I was looking on the internet, but he was one of them who was mourning the loss of his knowledge that he felt like was stolen from him. And so I found Khoisan names in this case. So I was, my mind was all over, and I, in my research and my thinking and.
So Petrus was a name used by one of the Khoisan.
Well, Petrus was the name of, at the time I wrote my article, Khoisan leader, and I even have the link to his talk.
I see.
And so, I saw that as honoring him.
Wonderful.
In some
And
way.
I picked it. I picked up the class assistant me. I picked up the Petra.
Amazing.
Yes, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, something's going on here with the
Yeah.
language. She's messing with something.
I was everything, and I hate to say, the academic in me was very intentional, and so the part I really had to work on was the creative side of me, right?
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I'm so glad I didn't know whether to bring that up or not. I said, I bet she doesn't even remember what that was about. And here you have it all.
It came back to me.
All figured out in your head. That's wonderful. I should tell you, by the way, folks out there, you're listening to Epic City. I'm Carolivia Herron talking with Professor Catherine Quinlan of the Howard University School of Education, who's written 3 chapter books for young people. To Africa and Back, Day and Night on the Space Station, Traveling Through the Trees. She interconnects African culture with magic and science, and it's just wonderful. And I feel like, as I said when I met her, I met her actually a while ago, but as she came in today, where have you been all my life? Because the first time I read children's books that give me an experience I think comparable to the Eurocentric books that I read as a child. This is truly the first time I've had it. They may be out there, but maybe I'm not vigorous enough to find them, but I'm glad that I found these with you. Thank
Glad
you.
to.
And we are going to close it up for now. And I'm going to put on our bolero from Africa and France together.
Thank you for having me.
And anything you'd like to leave us with before I close it out?
Wow. My goodness, not particularly. I
Okay.
think. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad we
I
met.
feel honored.
Did I mention we're part of the Faculty Leadership Institute of
Absolutely.
Howard University, and we want to
Mhm.
thank Howard for bringing us together. So I'm going to put on Bolero, Marvel's Bolero with an African hint on the side. Enjoy. Next week, I think we're going to have a Heronian extravaganza. My last name is Herron. I think I'm going to bring my brother on, and we're going to do an extravaganza for the year. Very well.